Hollywood producer and writer Bryce Zabel tells us about his book, AD After Disclosure, and some UFO-related movie projects he's working on. Plus, we'll talk about the latest space news and UFO news right now on Spacing Out. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
Let's jump right into some UFO headlines.
A man in Bialystok, Lithuania, filmed a strange UFO in the night sky on Tuesday, May 1st. The Daily Mail describes the object as looking like a police siren because, quote, it spins and flashes in different colors and remains motionless for 4 minutes, end quote.
The object in the video never displays any sort of motion, and the flashing colors of light seem better suited for a nightclub than an alien spacecraft. The object in question is likely a balloon with LED lights, but the UFO's appearance, it has a lack of movement through the sky, rather than sitting motionless like a balloon would. But it's difficult to determine much from the low-quality, shaky video, but there are a wide variety of products on the market today, enabling people to launch illuminated objects into the night sky to create a visual spectacle like the one seen in this video from Lithuania.
Although the official investigation into what fell from the Connecticut sky and crashed into Bantam Lake on April 10th was called off weeks ago, a private group is attempting to solve the mystery.
The Smoking Gun Research Agency, the SGRA, a paranormal research group in Orange, Connecticut, recently posted an investigation progress report to their website, www.sgra.org. As the Litchfield County Times explains, the group reports that on the morning of April 13th, SGRA received approximately 12 reports likely related to the incident, quote, that had folks in Litchfield, Morris, and beyond buzzing about a UFO, or at least about a meteor that may have fallen into the lake, end quote. Most of these witnesses were within a 5-mile radius of the lake, but none actually saw the object. They did, however, describe feeling shaking or vibrations, or heard a loud boom, and or saw a brief flash of light outside.
Now, according to the Litchfield Times, during the 2 weeks following the incident, the SGRA received a total of 37 additional observations, and most of these were similar in nature to the initial ones. They also reportedly discovered that a similar sighting of a green glowing object occurred on Monday, April 9th at approximately 10:45 p.m.
In other news, the Huffington Post recently published an article titled "Alien Abduction Research Suggests Episodes Are Actually Lucid Dreams." The article references a sleep study conducted in October of 2011 by the Out-of-Body Experience Research Center in Los Angeles, where 20 volunteers were coached to have realistic dreams or out-of-body experiences culminating in perceived encounters with aliens. According to the site Life's Little Mysteries, lead researcher Michael Radiga designed his experiment to test his theory that many reports of alien encounters are actually instances of people experiencing a vibrant, lifelike state of dreaming.
Now, 7 of these volunteers in the study were able to make contact with UFOs or extraterrestrials during their dreamlike experiences. But as the site Life's Little Mysteries pointed out back in October, the Out-of-Body Research Center is actually not affiliated with any academic institutions, and the new research has not been published in a peer-reviewed journal.
And although the recent Huffington Post article states that most psychologists think abductions are lucid dreams or hallucinations, we actually know several psychologists who don't ascribe to that theory.
UFOs are in the headlines every single day, and you can read about the stories we just talked about, as well as many more, at openminds.tv. Our viewer submission comes to us today from Andrew in St. Helens, Oregon. Andrew noticed a strange light outside his kitchen window at 11:30 p.m. on May 5th. He went outside on his back porch and shot nearly 3 minutes of video with his Motorola Razr cell phone.
The object in the video appears to be a bright, motionless light low in the night sky. The object appears to be flashing multiple colored lights, and at times the object appears to be spinning. Now, both the colors and the spinning appearance can be illusions caused by the camera. So when you try to shoot a photo or video in low-light situations, many cameras have difficulty focusing on bright objects. And when the camera tries to process the information, the camera can produce some interesting results. And this is especially true with cell phone cameras that are generally not so good.
Thanks for submitting your sighting video, Andrew. And if any of you would like your video featured on the show, all you have to do is upload your video to your favorite video sharing site like YouTube. Send us the link along with any details, and we might include it in an upcoming episode.
SpaceX was forced to delay its launch of its Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station last week due to issues with the guidance software. But it appears a new launch date has been scheduled.
On Friday, May 4th, NASA issued the following statement. After additional reviews and discussions between the SpaceX and NASA teams, we are in a position to proceed toward this important launch. The teamwork provided by these teams is phenomenal. There are a few remaining open items, but we are ready to support SpaceX for its new launch date of May 19th.
A research team from Arizona State University recently discovered glass sand on Mars that was likely formed by interaction between magma and ice or water. And according to Space.com, it's interactions like this that could create the perfect environment for microbial life.
The researchers, Bryony Horgan and James Bell, used the European Space Agency, ESA, Mars Express Orbiter to review a region in the planet's northern hemisphere where dark sediments have reportedly puzzled scientists. Having identified this as glass sand, Horgan explained that this discovery is important because it is the first direct evidence on Mars for explosive volcanism on a planetary scale.
According to Space.com, heat from a volcano eruption beneath a glacier could form a large subglacial lake. Claire Cousins of the University of London explains, quote, regions of volcano ice interaction on Earth provides a wide range of hydrothermal environments that can be exploited by microbial life, end quote. According to Horgan, this environment is, quote, the perfect place for microbes because it provides a nice, warm, safe place for microbes to hang out with lots of chemicals around to munch on. The research was published in the journal Geology.
The European Space Agency announced an exciting upcoming mission to explore Jupiter's icy moons. The mission is named JUICE, Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, and will be conducted by a solar-powered spacecraft that will spend 3.5 years within the Jovian system.
The research targets are Jupiter's moons Ganymede and Europa, as well as the upper atmosphere of Jupiter itself. As Universe Today explains, these moons are thought to have liquid oceans beneath their frozen surfaces, and if Earth is any indication, liquid oceans are a great place to look for extraterrestrial life.
The JUICE mission is slated for launch in June 2022, which would make the spacecraft's arrival at Jupiter in the early part of 2030.
Hollywood producer and writer Bryce Zabel recently took some time to talk with me about his book AD After Disclosure, as well as some other UFO-related project he has in the works. Here's the conversation we had. Well, Bryce, it's great to see you again, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. It's much appreciated.
I always love talking about this topic. It's always fun.
Fantastic. Well, there are a couple things I want to talk with you about today, but first I want to jump into talking about your book, AD After Disclosure, that you co-authored with UFO historian Richard Dolan. And first of all, I guess I would like you to sort of talk about disclosure in general, because I think most of our audience understands disclosure as it applies to the book as well as UFO extraterrestrial research. So if you could just tell us, basically an overview of disclosure, what that means.
Well, people have been talking about it for years. If you go back to Donald Kehoe in the 1950s, he kept talking about how the silence group was going to have to disclose any day. And if you think about it, for decades now, people have been discussing about how disclosure was imminent. And here we are, and it's 2012, and it's not here yet. So the question really would be, when would disclosure happen, and what does disclosure look like? And that's why Richard and I have been involved in writing this story about it. I think my feeling is you got to go back to a definition. Disclosure for us would be a very simple, basic thing. If we were to disclose that at least some of those objects that are seen flying around from time to time are physical, advanced technology from some place that isn't here, piloted by somebody that isn't us, that would be disclosure, if it didn't come from open minds or Bryce Zabel and Richard Dolan, but came from a president, a pope, a secretary general of the United Nations, a Chinese premier. If somebody in an official capacity were to say, yeah, we pretty much are on board with that limited definition, that some of these things not only are not explained, but we think they're from some other place, then I think the whole discussion about disclosure starts to change the world, which is why Rich and I wrote the book that we did. I think our feeling is that disclosure is one of those, disclosure of an ET reality is one of those seminal events in civilization that, in our opinion, will create, it may be a little ballsy to say it, but we think it's going to create a new calendar for us. That the BC world will, in the future, be before confirmation. The world that we're living in right now and have been all our lives, but specifically since the 40s, and we will then go into a post-disclosure or an AD world, so BC to AD. And
I really like that redefining the BCAD. That's cool.
It's a little gutsy to say it that way,
right.
And we don't mean to say that we think everyone is going to buy new calendars based on this. For us, it's a construct by which we can explain how the changes are going to happen. But I do think that it's more relevant to our civilization today, whether we believe in ET contact in reality, than whether we believe in Jesus Christ. I mean, those are both powerful and important concepts, but the one that could really change our world today is acknowledging that not only are we not alone, but it isn't like we have to send signals into space through the SETI program searching for our companionship in the universe. Somehow they're here. Whether that's good or bad, that's part of the disclosure.
There was, I found it extremely, I don't know, it caught me by surprise. There was a recent Reuters Ipsos poll, and I saw this in the Southwest Air in-flight magazine. They posted this number that said something like nearly 25% of the U.S. population not only believes that extraterrestrials exist, but that they're here on Earth now.
It's an astonishing number. And I think there's only one thing that astonishes me more than that number. It's an important amount of people that believe something that is so suppressed. In other words, if you, in a public forum, as I've been experimenting with by doing these interviews, say, well, actually, I do believe that we've been visited and that contact is ongoing, people kind of give you a weird look, and I've been to parties where I've expressed that, and as I always like to say, I get treated like the drunk uncle at the party for saying these things. And it strikes me as odd that saying something as simple as I think that we're being visited now and have been since World War II, that should be so controversial given how many people believe it. 25%, again, you say they're here now, but the vast, vast majority of people anymore are willing to admit we're not alone in the universe. And every day, it seems like somebody's discovering a new planet, and the amount of Earth-like or habitable planets that are out there could be vastly, vastly greater in number than we've ever thought before. So I think that I look forward to in my lifetime, whether or not the official disclosure comes, I look forward to the fact that you and I can have this conversation together, and it's not a fringe conversation. This should be a mainstream conversation that happens between people who have regular, real day jobs, but when they go to work, when they go to dinner at night with friends, they talk about it, or when they're at the water cooler with their coworkers, they talk about it, and it's not weird. That's what I hope will happen.
And I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I'm of the opinion that that shift from fringe to mainstream is happening right now, and there are contributing factors to that. The media, not always, but they're starting to take a better approach when it comes to reporting on the topic of UFOs or extraterrestrials. Sure. There's less ridicule. The factor is still there, but it's getting better. The news is being reported more like regular news, as here are the facts as we have them. That's the news, not throwing the little joke at the end, but also with it's shifting into mainstream science as well. Scientists are are actively looking at this topic more and more now, and you've got this emerging field of astrobiology, and with the various NASA programs, and now the privatization of space exploration, and the media is reporting on that as well. This just looking for extraterrestrial life. It's becoming, a very normal conversation that you see in the news and people happening and on TV. And, the huge public demand for this topic, the interest, you see it in Hollywood movies, on TV,
Sure.
in Super Bowl advertisements. I mean, I think it's becoming, we're so saturated with it now that I think people are starting to open up and talk about it because it's everywhere, and it's becoming something that is more okay to talk about rather than something that's this goofball thing that you're a nut job if you talk about.
Well, I wish I shared your optimism on that front. I do not see that we have made as much progress as we ought to have had by now. I still see so many examples where, like, I'm going to give you an example. NASA holds a big news conference to say they've discovered earthbound microbes out at Mono Lake, and that's a big deal to them, and they hold a news conference for it. Well, if that's a big deal, shouldn't the fact that there are craft flying around in our skies be something that they would look into? But no, they don't. The best example that I could give on the counterweight, and I do hope you're right, and I see trends that we're moving in that direction. But when those six Air Force officers stood up in 2010 at the National Press Club and said that they had had personal experience with UFOs hovering near nuclear bases, and every one of those guys was a guy that the government trusted with their finger on a button that could launch a nuclear war. Those people were ridiculed. They were ridiculed. The Washington Post sent a reporter across town to cover them, and he was a lifestyle reporter, not a national security reporter, and he began and ended his coverage of their news conference by talking about the kind of chocolate chip cookies that were at the news conference. This is not responsible coverage. I clearly, what I think is the problem is the establishment media still has its head in the sand as much as ever. The less established media, or the alternative media would be a better way to put it, are certainly more open to these concepts, but the problem is that they are marginalized. And also, let's face it, the UFO crowd does its own marginalizing of itself when we send out misspelled, non-grammatical screeds typed in caps with profanity flying around the globe, and that kind of thing. That doesn't help us be taken seriously. So if I can just cycle back to why Rich and I decided that the time had come to write AD After Disclosure, it was simply because we thought the one thing that we can do, we're both reasonably good writers. I think Rich is excellent, and I do my best. And we said we need to try to put this in a framework where we can help move that goal down the field a little bit, where people begin to see that, yeah, actually these guys sound intelligent, they have some facts about them, and maybe I should open my mind a little bit more to it. But when I talk to my friends in the media, and I've been in the media most of my career, they kind of smile at me. There's the little titter of laughter, and they still don't get it. And when Edgar Mitchell was a man who was trusted to fly the first Apollo craft to the moon after Apollo 13 almost killed everybody, so a very brave man, when he came out and said not only was Roswell real, but UFOs are real, CNN, when they covered him, crazy guy, they made it the kicker story to their newscast. They played X-Files music, and they had little green men in it. Now, is that an appropriate way to treat a national hero on a critically important national security issue? I don't think so. So, I hope for what you say. I'm doing what I can to move it in that direction. Certainly, what Open Minds has been doing is phenomenal, because just the very presentation that Open Minds brings to everything it does, whether it be radio or television or the magazine, it's all very authentic. It's very mainstream. It's a quality presentation, and that's what we've got to concentrate on doing, I think.
I agree with you, and you know, I didn't mean to make it sound like I think that we're there. We're certainly not there.
We're
We have
not there, but I
so
take
far
your
to
point. I
go.
do take your point.
But
You
yes,
know, compared
I
to
do
where we
think
have been, yeah.
right, and the fact that it's becoming a topic that is discussed more and more is certainly moving in the right direction. It's certainly not where it needs to be, and it's certainly not getting there fast enough. But
But I'm a Hollywood guy, and the thing is, Hollywood does make a lot of alien movies, but they're alien invasion movies that aren't based on anyone who has a respect for ufology or what the actual facts are. So we get battle LAs and we get battleships and things like that that aren't based in the literature at all. Certainly add their own form of confusion and exist only because aliens make good bad guys. If you can't beat on the communists anymore, aliens will do.
right.
So that's a bit of a problem. So one of the things that I'm doing in addition to AD After Disclosure is trying. I've optioned some key projects, some based on factual books in ufology that I hope to turn into movies that will be the kind of movie that when you get out of it, you go out to dinner with your friends and you say, "Wow, okay, that wasn't an alien invasion. That's basically based on fact. What does all this mean?" I think that's a direction that I'd like to nudge Hollywood in.
Well, one of the projects that I know you have in the works right now is Magic Men,
Sure.
and if you would tell us a little bit about Magic Men, because
Well,
that's
I've actually
something
got a
that's a project
visual
that
aid.
really interests me.
I have a visual aid for you.
Do
The
you
two
really?
the two books that I optioned were first Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey's Witness to Roswell, because they did phenomenal work on the Roswell case, and also Stanton Friedman's Top Secret Magic, where he investigates the MJ12 documents. And what I thought would be an interesting way to tell that story, and so Magic Man, by the way, is MAJIC, and it has nothing to do with pulling things out of hats, maybe other than the truth. But Magic Men is about the competition that Stan and Don and other researchers had to break open the Roswell case, to chase down those witnesses, and to race the Undertaker, to get them on the record before those men, those heroic men, and some women from the late 40s could come forward and tell their stories. And the story of investigating Roswell is almost as compelling as Roswell in its own way. I like to say that Magic Men is the story of two down-to-earth guys who are chasing a story that is out of this world, right? And I think that that's one of the things what we have to start doing. We have to push some of these projects that are based in ufological reality, and say to Hollywood, hey, these are good stories too, but we have to do them with the same commercial talent that has been brought to these other endeavors. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. One other project, by the way, I've optioned Stan Friedman's other book, Captured, about the Betty and Barney Hill case, and I'm working on a movie called Betty and Barney that will be the first feature film version of that classic 1961 abduction case. I'm a lot further along on Magic Men. That script, in fact, you're the first to see it. There it is.
Wow.
It's got mass and volume. It'll be out in town pretty soon, and hopefully the kind of reaction that it will garner will be what I hope will be that kind of surprised, wow, that really happened? These people really testified to that? And hopefully Stan and Don will be good sports about seeing themselves portrayed sometimes in less than flattering light, but that's the way it is. I mean, they're human beings. They are regular guys who were out there fighting in the trenches to bring the truth to people like you and me.
And I'm sure you're not going to have James Earl Jones reprise his role.
No, and Betty and Barney,
Right,
no.
right.
I personally, well, first of all, the Interrupted Journey, the 1975 NBC movie that James Earl Jones was in, was a fine movie for its time, but just a very poorly executed film compared to what we could do now. And it was also based on a book that was written in, I believe, 65 or 66, The Interrupted Journey, about Betty and Barney, that so much new information has been uncovered since then that it led Stan and Kathleen Marden, who was the niece of Betty Hill, to write their book Captured. So there's a lot more information out there. But better still, there are a lot of other filmmaking tools that brought to bear on their story could make it just a riveting story. And again, we tell these stories by finding the human angle. In Magic Men, it's Stan and Dawn competing to tell the story. In Betty and Barney, the human angle is this. If you think about it, Betty and Barney were an interracial couple in 1961. Barney was an African American man married to a white woman, and they lived in New Hampshire, and you can imagine that was a pretty rare thing in 1961, less rare today. And in 1961, when they were abducted, you could probably fairly say that the only people who did not care about the color of their skin were their abductors, because everybody who was a human being would have noticed it in polite meetings and conversation. So I think those are the kind of ways to get into these stories and make the story a great Hollywood movie, but at the same time put in that truth about what's really going on out here.
Both of those projects sound incredibly exciting, and I'm glad to hear that you are working on them. You're right.
I'm working until my fingers bleed on the typewriter.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, all the Hollywood stuff now and
I just realized
forever,
I've been holding up other people's books. Before we get out of here, I'm going to hold up AD After Disclosure.
I'd like to jump back to it right now.
I'm so proud of this book. And, you know, it's been true of my life as a storyteller that when I can't find a movie or a story told the way I would like to see it or hear it, I just do it myself. And I've read, like you and many others, hundreds of UFO books out of the thousands that have been written. And I had never read a book like AD After Disclosure. I wanted to read it, and in fact, had I been able to go to Barnes & Noble and pick a book like it off the shelves, I wouldn't have written it, and neither would Richard, because Richard gave up writing part 3 of his tremendous UFOs and the National Security State Trilogy in order to write this. And the reason we did it is it's a book whose time is now, and it must be written. Somebody had to do it, and we felt like the talents that we brought together to make it speak to people in a way that we hope will be important were twofold. Richard is the best historian that I've worked with on this level, on the broadest level of knowledge about this whole phenomenon. And I've had a lot of experience telling stories dramatically. And if you think about it, this is not a backward story looking at the past in AD After Disclosure. It's not about the BC world, the before confirmation world. AD is about the post-disclosure, the after-disclosure world, and that involves speculation. It involves trying to tell a story about what the world and the future is going to look like after this profound event takes place. And I can't, I'm a little older than you, so I don't know that it'll happen in my lifetime. I think it will, but I'm relatively certain it will occur in yours.
And so the book was originally published in 2010, correct?
Yes, as a
hardback.
I've now held up every book on my desk, so we're done.
That's
now.
great. I'm glad you've got so many visual aids there. This is great.
Yeah.
So the paperback just came out, this month, right?
Yes, and it wasn't that it's just the paperback version. We went to a different publisher, and we took a whole different look at it. We tried to update things. We cut a whole chapter. We moved things around. We added things that had happened since the first book came out. But more than that, we tried to say, what can we do to make this the most efficient and convincing and provocative story of this AD world? So we took another crack at it. It's not to say that someone who bought the original hardcover needs to go out and buy this. They don't. They've pretty well read the majority of what's at play there. But the nice thing about the trade paperback version is it's more accessible. You know, Barnes & Noble is going to have it on their tables when you walk into the store. And we hope, Richard and I, that this could be one of those first kind of crossover books where it's not in the UFO ghetto in the back of the store under New Age, but that it might be in sociology, or it might be on a table with new nonfiction. Of course, I'll probably be heartbroken because I'll walk into a Barnes & Noble next month and find it on a table under fiction, and I'll want to go talk to the manager and tear my hair out. That's the world we live in.
Right. Well, something else that caught my eye was you managed to snag an endorsement by Stan Lee.
Yes. Stan's a friend of mine. I'm very proud that Stan would write this. He wrote a blurb for us. Not a bad time to have a Stan Lee blurb when the Avengers is taking over the
Right.
world right now. Stan and I wrote a pilot for Stan for NBC back in the 90s called Missing Link. It was kind of a Hulk kind of storyline, although not the same. And we just got to be good friends. I worked with him on his ill-fated Stan Lee media venture, but we started having our championship dining sessions. We would go to lunch about every 2 or 3 months for a period of a number of years. He's just one of the world's nicest guys. I mean, everything you've heard about how nice he is all true. He's got an enormous capacity for life, and I think he's a great example for all kinds of people that as you age, you don't have to become irrelevant. You can stay relevant, and you can still tell your stories and live your life and make a difference. And I mean, think about the life Stan Lee has lived. He's lived long enough to create these characters in comic books and see them brought to life in films where the technological capacity of the filmmakers is such that they can actually improve on the comic books in terms of what these characters are allowed to do. So that's a long answer about Stan, but he's a great guy, and Richard and I couldn't have been more thrilled because, in a way, it also says something about our book. It's not just a book where fellow ufologists come together to blurb each other's books. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've got a few of them in our book, and I blurb for a few other people. I'm not putting that down. That's good. But to find someone who is outside, who is willing to comment on ufology is, to me, the gold here. And in addition to Stan, we reached out to some other people who are famous not for their work in ufology, but who read or participated in the book and helped us create the vision that we have of this shiny new future we're going to have.
Well, that's terrific. Well, congratulations with
Thank
that,
you.
and so much congratulations to you and Richard on the book. And I hope that that the paperback version does see great success. Hopefully, its placement will do some good there in Barnes and Noble.
Maybe someday I'll be adapting it to a movie, and that would be fun too.
Or you'll be able to sit back in your rocking chair and see other people adapting it to movies, and
That's right. Or just stealing it. That's what we do in Hollywood too, I
or
guess.
stealing. That works too.
But I'm very thrilled just to have made this statement, and now, what may come, let it come.
Right. Well, that's a great attitude. I love it. Well, Bryce, it's always great talking to you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but
All right,
we'll
very
definitely
good.
talk to you again very soon because you and I have so much to talk about.
Say hello to all my good friends at Open Minds, and I'll catch you on the next time.
All right, Bryce, thank you so much.
In every episode of Spacing Out, we highlight some interesting upcoming events like these. The 13th Annual UFO Festival in McMinnville, Oregon will take place May 18th and 19th. The UFO Festival explores and celebrates the possibilities of life beyond Earth. Skeptics and believers alike are invited to join in the festival, featuring UFO speakers, a costume parade, live music, kids' activities, and more. Find out more at ufofest.com. The first annual Women's UFO Symposium will be held May 19th through the 20th at the Somerville County Expo Center in Glen Rose, Texas. The event, created by UFO researcher and journalist Paola Harris, will feature women in UFO research, documentation, and related information. Both men and women are invited to attend. Find out more at starworksusa.com. Space Fest 4 will be held May 30th through June 3rd in Tucson, Arizona at the Star Past Resort. The event features a prestigious list of astronauts and speakers discussing astronomy, manned exploration, robotic exploration, commercial space, and space history. For more information, visit www.spacefest.info. For more upcoming events like these, visit openminds.tv/events for the latest in space and UFO-related listings.
We've reached the end of another episode of Spacing Out. Thanks so much for joining us today.
And remember, you can participate in the show by sending us your comments, UFO sighting stories, opinions, astronomy, photos, really anything you think is relevant to the show. Just email us at missioncontrol@spacingout.tv or leave us a voicemail at 480-302-2132. We just might include it in a future episode.
That's all for this week. We will see you in the future. So long.